Welcome back to Montferrat. Much like Imperfect Cell, we're still a little bit away from becoming perfect. Last time we spent a long time playing around with the League War, trying to win. After that, I actually looked up in the files about the League War, and one thing I was doing wrong is I really should have maxed my diplomatic spending, because your diplomatic reputation plays a role in whether nations actually join your league. So that was a mistake on my part. I was also thinking about how we deal with the banks, or the bank that's leading one of the leagues, and I came up with an idea. I haven't tried it, but I'm pretty confident it will work. We're going to set the bank as our rival. That will give us access to the humiliate rival CB. We of course can't take their land, but banks don't have any land anyway. So let's first of all throw out one of our rivals. Which one should we throw out? I guess Muscovy. We don't really need to keep them as a rival. And then we'll set the bank. It looks like we like the bank a little too much. We need to insult them first. We're going to keep our diplomatic spending high though, so it won't be long before we have the diplomats. One thing I'm going to do is turn off a lot of our armories. I built a little too many when I was rushing up to get that 10,000 manpower in order to get the event to reform the Imperial Army. So we're going to turn them off for a bit. We don't really need them. We have a lot of manpower and the money is better used elsewhere. One of the things I forgot to do actually in Constantinople was upgrade all my spinners. So we'll see about expanding our economy. Let's also get rid of that a little bit of inflation. Probably should have done that before I built those buildings, but it's a minor thing. We're also going to see about cutting through Hungary to get to the HRE, and finally take our rightful place within the HRE. We could honestly probably get elected now if we really tried to increase our relationship, so maybe we will, especially since we're maxing our diplomatic reputation. Another thing that's a bit of an issue is our max tax. You can't really see it right now because we're getting a parliament approved taxes, but because of the Pronoia system, our max tax is actually relatively low. Our estates really like it. They're all very happy not paying the max amount of tax, but it's a problem we're basically going to have to deal with until we eventually throw out the Pronoia system and transition to not using it. Their Bardi is now our rival, so as I mentioned, we can use the humiliate rival CB on them, and then we can force them to dissolve their faction that way. We'll begin building a spy network on them. We still have 2 bureaucratic slots to hand out. The only reason I haven't is because nothing's really jumping out at me immensely. We're not going to bother with Unix. I guess it would result in our children being a little better, but it's a minor issue. We can't get arguably the best bureaucracy in the game, this one that gives a cabinet seat and a local governor, which actually increases to 2 local governors. We can't get it because we didn't finish the Fate of the Phoenix, and we're not Trebizond, sadly, so that's not an option. We'll probably grab Nomos, just because it'll increase our crown power and increase estate satisfaction. And I guess we could grab Ritualistic Court. It does give a little bit of monthly legitimacy. It increases the speed of annexation, but we're never going to be annexing any vassals. And honestly, the 10% we gain from it isn't very much when you consider we lose 33 from being decentralized anyway, so it doesn't even counteract that. So I think for now we'll just hand out Nomos, and then I'll continue to and ah about the other options. Our spy network is big enough against the Hungarians, so we'll begin fabricating a Restore Roman Borders CB, and then we'll think about cutting straight through them to the HRE. We're probably just going to take this southern coastal area along the Adriatic. There's our CB. Before we do go to war with them, I keep forgetting to, so let's head over to our bank friend and see how much money they have for us. If I can find, there it is. Our bank friend has around 4,000 ducats, so we'll accept their donation, and then I think we'll invest that money into making some navies. We very much want to spread our maritime presence further afield. No, not 50, 10. And that money pays for 2 fleets, so we'll do just that. Here's our war with the Hungarians. We'll call the Polish in, since they're willing to help. No reason not to have them in. This should be a very quick and easy war, honestly. We'll see about, just as I mentioned, I don't know, let's see. Could we take all of the land the Hungarians control that is Rome? I don't think so. We also need to be wary of antagonism because it will upset states in Italy. We could take a lot of land though. We'll have to see what it looks like when it comes to making peace. Just based off the numbers I'm seeing here, it's not great, so we probably won't take this amount. We definitely want to annex Croatia though, because they're a nation we could then release as a historical subject. Someone else we want to attack is actually Venice. They hate us, so we might as well destroy them. And Venice is also very vulnerable to being just turned into a Pronoia. Because Venice has the elective succession law, just turning them into a Pronoia will result in them being full annexed without much issue at all. And there we go, the Hungarians have decided it's not worth continuing. I'm not sure I believe the antagonism numbers from this. Apparently we're going to gain next to no antagonism with anybody of relevance. I can see it, I guess we are going to gain some antagonism with a few nations. For some reason it's really not showing them, because for some reason these Arabic Heroic nations have a lot of antagonism to us by default, but it looks fine. As long as no one's hitting 50 other than Hungary, who we don't particularly care about, then we're all good, right? Annex this territory, and then we'll immediately release some historical subjects here. Who can we release? Well, we'll release Slovenia, or Slavonia, and we'll release Croatia, obviously. We'll release Bosnia too, and and then a few other people. I think we're going to have to hand out land to them because there's quite a bit of territory here that we can see isn't cored and there's no historical subjects to manage it. So we'll just hand out a bit of land to these guys. Hopefully they can integrate it before they die. If not, we can just release someone else to do that. It's not a big deal at all, right? Maybe we could even call the land ourselves if we weren't so lazy, but we are what we are. Since Bosnia is so small and tiny, I think I'll give them most of this land. It doesn't feel good to see Bosnia so small. They're a much more respectable Bosnia. We'll then of course pull back. We need to wait for our truce to expire with Bardi, which is going to be in a few months. Then we can begin creating our CB on them. We can also begin fabricating our CB on Venice. Now that we've actually cut a path through to Italy, fighting wars with Venice and other Italian states is going to be a lot easier. If we look at the Italian War, another two factions are formed. We've got one led by Arborea here, and then we've got one led by this tiny nation here, so not a big deal at all. Once we destroy the second Italian League, we'll probably have enough population of our league to just win the conflict, though we'll have to see, of course. The guy we put in charge of Slavonia over here didn't last very long, so he's dead. We'll add all of his land to the HRE, which we can now do because it is our core. We still need to get through Bosnia, though, in order to start adding our lands to the HRE, so we'll hope the Bosnian ruler dies fairly quickly. We did give him a bunch of land to core, so it would be a little awkward if he doesn't manage to core all of it, but I'm sure we'll survive. Alright, here's our humiliate rival CB on Bardi. Let's just declare war right now. It's a little awkward fighting a bank because they don't really have land that we can occupy, but if any locations they control are within our territory, we do gain war score as if we were occupying that land. Luckily, Bardi is allied with Portugal, so we can gain a bit of war score from occupying Portugal. We don't necessarily need obscene amounts of war score, just enough that Bardi is willing to dissolve its league. We'll have to see whether occupying Portugal is enough to do that. The answer is no, but as time goes on, they'll eventually surrender. Another thing is we're gaining ticking war score because we won the one battle that we fought, so I think just waiting them out, they should surrender after a little while. And there we go, Bardi is capitulated. That makes things a lot easier. We could turn them into our Prenoia, but it's very expensive, as you can see. 500 war score cost, so we can't do that. One thing we could do though is extract a bit of money from them. We'll ask them for war reparations, and then we'll just take some money from them, I guess. Should we do anything with Portugal? Portugal is only this single location. We could just annex them. One thing we could do is annex them, then release them and attempt to feed them all of the Spanish territory that Spain has taken from them. It sounds quite appealing, but the problem is, of course, getting over to Spain from where we are, which I suppose won't be a big deal. Does France hate us? France doesn't hate us. Maybe we should try allying with France and using them to beat up the Spanish for us. I think this is an interesting idea, so let's do it. No one really cares about us annexing Portugal, so we won't lose any sleep over it. We'll just send them away, and then of course we'll end the war with Bardi, dissolving their league. This puts a lot of people out of a league. Hopefully they join ours. Now, before I forget, because I tend to forget things almost immediately after doing them, let us release Portugal back into the world as it should be. Because we now share a border with Spain through Portugal, we can fabricate the Restore Roman Borders CB on them, which means we could fabricate that CB and use it against them. Right, I think it's time that we strike at Venice. We can call in a lot of people, so this war should be fairly simple. We're going to see if we can't subjugate Venice and turn them into a Prenoia. That way we'll just inherit them on the death of their ruler, which will make things very nice and easy. They've also called in one of the people who has a Italian league, so we'll see about dissolving that as well while we're here. For the rest of them, I think we'll just bully them to death, maybe force them to give us war reparations and such likes. The main problem with fighting Venice, as always, is actually getting onto Venice. There's no way we're going to be able to defeat the Venetian navy, although maybe. There's definitely no way. They have far too many ships. We could make a navy to compete with theirs, but I'd much rather not invest so much in heavy ships just yet. So instead we'll just see if we can't slip into Venice and take it when they're distracted elsewhere. One of the things we could do with these very small states that have joined Venice is we could just turn them into Prenoia. As long as they have some sort of elective succession, it means we'll inherit them. We do need to be a little careful though when it comes to antagonism. You know me, infinitely greedy, so I need to make sure that I don't bite off too much, but I can't resist the urge to just take large large swathes of territory, or even small swathes of territory, essentially for free. While we're here, we'll also, as discussed, have these guys dissolve their league. We are getting close to the point where the League War ends. We're 7 years away, so we do need to start really thinking about destroying as many leagues as possible. There's the first Italian League, led by Arborea. Then there's this third Italian League. I think it's also led by a bank. Yes, this is also a bank. That's inconvenient. But we can't replace our rivals while we're at war, so we'll have to leave it for a moment. Alright, we've occupied Venice. We can't make peace with them right now because they've started calling in other nations, as they tend to in this League War, and because our allies and vassals went and lost us a bunch of battles. And looking at the numbers, I don't actually think it's worth vassalizing Venice, at least not just yet. It's going to massively increase antagonism. And I really want to end the war quickly because we've only got 5 years until the League War ends. And of course, I want to spend these 5 years actually winning the League War. So I think when it comes to Venice, the only thing we can actually do is make a white peace because we don't have any war score. So I guess we'll do that. It really doesn't feel good. If only our allies hadn't gone over and just lost all these battles. And to be fair, if we continued the war, it wouldn't be a big deal. We just need to occupy enough of them that they surrender. Their war exhaustion is quite high, so if we just dragged it out, eventually they just capitulate. But if I wasn't in the League War, I would do that. But I do want to win the League War, and I need to be at peace in order to take certain actions. We just need to destroy these other leagues. For that, we're going to need to set this bank as our rival. Let's throw out one of our existing rivals. I guess we'll throw out Bardi. We don't really need them as a rival anymore. Hopefully they don't go off and spawn another Italian league. That would definitely be annoying, right? But we'll set this bank of Spinolia as our rival. We'll then begin building a spy network on that bank so that we can then create the humiliate rival CB. Right now we'll declare war on we can't declare war on Arborea because they're in a union with Poland. I don't even know how exactly would they get into a union. Maybe they invited the Polish king to take their throne? I mean, who is this guy? He's Venetian. He is the son of the former king of Poland, so he's the Polish king. How exactly did he become the ruler of Arborea here? Well, we can still declare war. We just need to break our alliance with Poland. It's a little annoying because we don't really want to break our alliance with Poland, so I guess we'll just have to do it. We'll then declare war as if nothing happened. It may be a little awkward now to get enough war score because of Poland for us to dissolve the league. I suppose on the flip side, it does mean we could just attack Poland to rack up the war score. We don't really share a border with them though. I suppose we'll see how things go. Behind this, we'll begin fabricating our humiliate rival CB on the bank. It's getting kind of close now. We're 2 years off the end of the League War and we're at 170 locations. It's going to be a little scary, but I'm still feeling confident. We'll see if my confidence decays as time passes. There, that's done. We'll have these guys dissolve their league, bringing the amount of leagues that exists to only 4, not counting our own. We're still fabricating our CB on that bank. We're just going to wait for that to become available. Here's our CB. We won't delay. We'll just immediately declare war. I'm pretty sure what's going to happen, because this is a bank, they'll capitulate after the war has lasted a year. We can't really gain war score on them because they don't control anything. They're a relatively small bank and they don't have any allies, so we're just going to have to wait out the war. Not a big deal. It may bring us down to the wire though when it comes to winning the Italian wars, but we'll see. Instead of sitting and doing nothing, I think we're going to attack the Turks. They actually have a lot of allies, which may make this a little awkward. Apparently we are outnumbered and outmatched. To be honest, I don't quite believe it though. We'll declare war. We'll call in the Neapolitans, they'll probably help. The Turks are bringing in Timur, but Timur isn't at his most powerful status that he used to be, so I don't think he'll be too big of a rival. We'll see if the game's right and I am underestimating them. As I said, I don't quite believe it though. There's the bank capitulating as I said. We could turn them into a pronoia, although no, they're a bank. We don't really want to. We would want to turn them into a state bank. We could vassalize them. I don't know if vassalizing them dissolves their league though. I don't want to risk it, so we'll just have them dissolve their league and we'll end it there. Now there's very few nations left in the League War. Hopefully some of them join our faction. We only need 7 provinces, so as long as somebody decides to join us, we'll be in the clear when it comes to winning the League War. There, we're now 4 locations off, and so ends the Italian Wars. It was a bit of a nail biter, especially towards the end there. I I was very scared that someone would just decide to leave our faction at the last moment and we'd end up losing. But we do win. Our rewards, we gain the Victors in the Italian Wars modifier for the rest of the game, which increases our crown power by 10% and gives us access to an Italian administrative centre, which is essentially just a local government that can only be built in Italy and doesn't actually need to be connected to our capital, making it excellent. We also gain access to the administration of Italian lands law, and we gain access to the unique option because we're Byzantium, or because we won as the Balkan League as Byzantium. We gain this option, which increases our crown power by 33%, increases assimilation speed in Italy by 50%, which is quite a lot, and increases the amount of legionaries we can have by 100%. I can't remember if legionaries got patched or whether they still suck. Either way, we can't actually get them because we haven't formed Rome yet. Ooh, the Protestant reformation has begun. Where is Martin Luther spawned? He's spawned over in, looks like just central Germany, although maybe it's more accurate to say West Germany, but it's began. We're still not Holy Roman Emperor, we're just waiting on the current emperor to finally die. He's been in power for how long? He's been in power for, I suppose, not that long. It's only been around 20, a little less than 20 years since he came to power. Hopefully he dies relatively soon. His continued survival is an annoyance, and it's delaying our reforms to the Holy Roman Empire, which isn't in the best situation right now. The empire is weak, the emperor is weaker, it needs a strong hand. It needs somebody who knows how to run such a large empire, someone with experience, someone with a good, long history of managing rather dysfunctional states. And luckily, Byzantium is right here, ready to take on that great burden. Alright, Turks have been struck down. Was the war harder than I thought it would be? Kind of. Not because they were necessarily strong, but just because their numbers were so many, especially with the Timurids, that they kind of drowned us in men. Even when we were going to win battles, they would just send so many levies to reinforce that we would end up losing. Not a big deal though. Now, what to take is the question. We're going to come up to the border of the Great Beast, but I think we're going to take this. We'll likely release all of this land as Pronoia in the short term to core it for us. So let's do just that. I was going to attack Spain, but it looks like my CB has dissolved, which isn't shocking. So we'll focus on getting that again. We're going to ally with France, and as I mentioned, use them to destroy Spain for us. I actually prefer to not be a hegemony, because if I'm not a hegemony, it means I can use the destroy hegemony CB, which I think we will use against France when it comes time to attack them. But now though, let's release a bunch of nations here in Anatolia to manage the land on our behalf. All right, now let's go to war with Spain. We'll call in France. They'll probably just win the war for us. Our goal for this war is to return Portugal's territory, so we'll see how much of their land we can give back. We'll also, I think, grab some land that belongs to minor nations, for example, Galicia, Leon, Aragon. We might end up absorbing these vassals a few times because, you know, their rulers will die and they'll get annexed, but we can just keep releasing them as many times as we want. There's nothing stopping us from doing that. Ooh, I think Spain actually annexed Portugal here. I noticed that their loyalty slipped below 50% and then it went back up. I assumed that's because they were showing discontent and then stopped, but it looks like the Spanish actually annexed them. That's pretty annoying. It's not the end of the world. We could just grab a bit of territory and release Portugal again, but it means we won't be able to return their cause in this war, which is sad, but there isn't really anything we can do about it now that it's happened. If only I'd noticed in the moment. Oh well. All right, let's make peace. I'm not going to take much land. In fact, actually, let me take a little bit of Granada. I want to get just enough land that I can release nations there that I can then feed. So as I said, we're not going to take much because the priority is to take a little and then feed them the land back very quickly. I haven't actually fought any battles or anything because France basically handled them before I even got there. We do need a little bit more war score though. Let's see if we can get that. No, it looks like we got that before we arrived. So let's make peace. We'll restore Portugal, Galicia, Leon, Granada, and Aragon to the world. For now, they'll just hang out there. In the next war against Spain, we'll see about restoring as much of their territories as we can. As I mentioned, they may just die because their rulers die. If they do, that's not a big deal. We'll just absorb them back into ourselves and release them again. Now, let's attack Venice again. Last time we had to cool the war a little early because I was trying to win the League War. So this time, let's fully destroy them. Unfortunately, Milan's going to join the war on their side because they're allied to them. That's a little sad. Milan has been our supporter for quite a while, but I guess we'll have to cut them off now. We were going to have to do so anyway eventually, so it is what it is. There, Venice has capitulated. Took a little while just to siege down their capital. We can now immediately turn them into a pronoia. This will upset people though, but I think we can accept their upset. It's mainly just going to be some Italian states. Hungary and the Turks, who were already upset at us, are going to gain a little offense as well. So we'll do it. We'll turn Venice into a pronoia. Venice has an elective succession, so as I keep saying, on the death of their ruler, we'll just inherit them outright. Then we're just going to go on a bit of a diplomatic offensive, as we often do, just to increase relationships with the people that hate us and potentially avoid a coalition. Venice is never going to be happy being our vassal because of, being violently oppressed by us. So the hope is that their ruler will die before the truce expires in around 15 years. Surely he won't live that long, right? He's already like 58. And even if they do get angry, we can just always call them into a war of some kind and avoid a potential revolt that way. Because of the amount of antagonism we've gained, though, we probably shouldn't go on any more big expansions, at least for a little bit. We're still waiting on the Holy Roman Emperor to finally die so that we can take our rightful place as the Holy Roman Emperor. Sadly, there's not much we can do other than wait. We have gained the connection between our lands and the HRE itself, though, so I'm going to begin arduously adding locations to the HRE, not all of them, just enough of them that we achieve a certain criteria. I think I'll just have the route go all the way to Constantinople, which should be enough. There, because we've added a lot of our locations to the HRE, we're now getting this dominant nation in the HRE modifier that gives us a plus 75 to their likelihood to vote for us, which, as we can see, pretty cleanly puts us on top of the HRE. Now, if only the ruler would just die, we could reap the benefits of such a situation. Ooh, France, I think, is attacking into the HRE. It definitely looks like it. In good conscience, then I can't join them. We'll have to cut them off. Goodbye, France. This is probably a good opportunity for me to think about fighting France itself. They're the main thing that's dragging down the imperial authority of the HRE. They're occupying a lot of rightful HRE territory, so we'll need to think about fighting them. They are fighting into the HRE right now, so there's a good chance they'll come out of the war a little weaker. We'll use a takedown hegemony CB on them. That's probably the smartest thing to do, and we like to do smart things. We'll also see about expanding our army. One thing I'm kind of trying to do is not create cavalry. I mean, it's not going to be no cavalry at all, but I feel like I always just make so much cavalry. This time I'd rather try and make infantry, if only to diversify a little bit. I think actually France might lose this war against the HRE. That would actually be excellent. At the very least, it means that they'd be down a bit when we attack them. We are going to need to wait a bit before we can attack them, though, because we broke the alliance. We have a truce with them, so we have to wait 4 years before we can attack them. If we're very lucky, the war will last that long, so we'll be in the perfect position to jump them without them having a chance to recover. It's almost impossible the war will last that long, though, especially when they've taken so many casualties. We'll begin fabricating our CB, though. One thing we might do is, if we get enough spy network on them, we can agitate liberty in their vassals. They still have quite a few vassals knocking around: Brittany, Eastern Flanders, to name a few. So we could agitate liberty in these guys to make them a little disloyal, so that when we do fight them, they're less of a problem. Looks like the war's ended between France and the HRE. We'll have to see how much they can recover in the gap between us attacking them and this war that they've had. There's a good chance they'll just recover massively, but as long as they don't recover too much, it won't be too bad. Another thing we should think about is potential allies we can pull in to help us fight France. Quite a few of the nations we would ordinarily call in are now going to have truces with France, though, so we won't be able to call them in. Like Bohemia, for example, they've got a truce that lasts until 1532. Austria too has a truce for the same amount of time. Milan has a truce that's going to end before we can declare war, so we can definitely pull them in. If the Holy Roman Emperor would just die as well, we could use the option of paying people in the HRE to join our wars. There's our CB online. 2 years until we can declare war. Oh, finally we've done it. Basileus Philippus Palaiologos is now the Holy Roman Emperor. Finally. Now we can think about improving this empire that's been mismanaged by so many nations. We can see we're likely going to lose the electorate. This is probably, or almost definitely, because we don't have any heirs because of our electoral system. We might have to switch out of the noble elective just while we're working on the Holy Roman Empire. It does mean we won't be able to use pronoia, though, which I think goes without saying would be really annoying. We could just accept the fact that we're going to lose the emperorship and just let it be lost, with the knowledge we'll gain it again next time around. I don't really like the idea of doing that though. But at the same time, I don't like the idea of not being able to use my beautiful pronoia to just core everything for me. Well, our ruler's still quite young, so maybe let's not rush to do anything just yet. Alright, our truce with France is up. We have our takedown hegemony CB. Naples isn't willing to join, but we do have enough favours on them that we should be able to call them into the war after it starts. We can also use the option of paying people within the HRE to join us. France still hasn't quite recovered. They do have more regulars than us though, and there's a good chance mercenaries take the field as well. We can always call up mercenaries of our own if the situation demands it though. So I think really we're ready, but I think we'll leave that for next time. Next time we'll see about tearing down the French. I've actively been trying to avoid becoming a hegemony so that we can continuously use the destroy hegemony CB. One of the things that's we're quite close on is diplomatic hegemony. I have to keep bringing down my diplomatic spending and avoid using the improved diplomatic reputation option because we keep taking the status of hegemony. But as long as we have someone we want to destroy who is a hegemony, in this instance France, we can keep using that destroy hegemony CB to just take massive amounts of land. So as long as there is some we need to destroy, I'm going to focus on staying as not a hegemony. We can see quite a few of our vassals here are disloyal. That's mainly just because of their numbers. They're as usual vastly overestimating themselves when compared to me. This war ironically will probably solve that because they'll probably just take massive casualties in the war. We do need to be careful about them separate piecing the French though. I'm likely just going to support loyalists in a bunch of them, specifically the ones that border France primarily, just to make sure they don't surrender their territory. There's not much we can do about Venice. They of course still hate us, but Venice is a little too far away from the French border, so there's a good chance they won't take any land from them if they do separate piece them. Who knows, maybe we'll be lucky enough to keep the French away from the border with Venice anyway, and so we'll be able to avoid such a problem. But as I said, I think we'll leave it here. Next time, I think we'll just dedicate our time to just destroying France. We'll probably have back-to-back wars until they're fully eliminated, and I guess we're probably going to have to switch out of the pronoia system now that we are HRE Emperor. To be fair, at this point, do we even need it? I mean, it's very nice. Like, it'd be very nice if we could release France, have them die, and then just integrate all their territory. But at this point, we probably don't need it. We do have a lot of cabinet seats, so we probably should just use those to do all the coring, right? It is sad not being able to do the old pronoia strategy, but the goal here is to become Holy Roman Emperor. And don't think I've forgotten, we do need to form Rome. One of the reasons I've been holding off on it is because we're going to need to take Rome itself. And as you can imagine, the Pope, as we're Catholic, he's not going to like that. So we'll probably take Rome, form Rome, give Rome back to the Pope in the same breath, and then the matter will be settled. But once we've taken down France, the world will kind of be our oyster and we can do as we please. That'll probably be the point where we cut off Naples and start eating them. But I'll say, I think for the third time, thank you for watching. I hope you did enjoy this video, and I'll see you next time.